this last dozen or so doing a little bit more regional scope. But as Ed was sharing, one of the things that it comes inherent with my job with 29 school districts and 29 elected boards, as you might imagine, we get a chance to engage with leadership groups at this level, what I call executive leadership group, whether it's a United Way or a school district. Boards are boards are boards are boards. And the good news is that they all go through, startups, they all go through spurts of excitement, they get committees going, they get all those kinds of things happening, and there's a real natural life form, if you will, to how, or life cycle to how executive leadership really looks. And so as Ed and I were conversing about that same thing, as I was sharing with him, we've not only work with school districts, but we work with rural hospitals and rural hospital boards as well. We also have our planning group currently right now working with Chelan PUD and helping them with, with their planning process. And so, as part of our dialogue together, I said, what I'd be happy to come and share is maybe some things that I have seen along the way that are just worthy of some thought and consideration. Maybe there's some ways that can further accelerate your work, or that can allow you to jump forward even faster. Like I say, I know just about enough about your project to be dangerous. And so, what I hope we can do is just have a dialogue about maybe kind of where you are in your project. I thought maybe I'd start by just sharing some broad thoughts about, as we get a chance to work with some boards, some things that kind of tend to kind of the river that runs through it. Kind of when I look at those real high-performing leadership teams, kind of what's that look like, and then you all can make judgments about which pieces of that resonate with you or make sense or don't make sense, or we can explore those a little bit further, and then maybe have you share a little bit of kind of where you are in your process, and we can dialogue about maybe there's a couple of ideas or a couple of thoughts that we can do to just kind of help you move forward. Because as I mentioned, my background is in small communities. I started, my first principalship was in Harrington, Washington, if you can imagine. My fondest memory of that is that we used to have the fall homecoming parade, and the parade basically went down the street 2 blocks and then turned around and came back. That was the extent of the deal. It had about two pickup trucks and a float, and that was our whole extent. And so as Ed was sharing with me, I think kind of the more grand vision that you have for this Mainstreet project and what have you, it hits really near and dear to my heart, because our country right now could benefit by having more small communities, more hometowns than we have today. And so that part is for certain. Maybe a couple of thoughts about high-performing teams and boards that I get a chance, because the good news is every now and then I get to work with those that are struggling a little bit, but far more often than that I get to work with those that are really scooting along and are just looking for ways that they can speed up and go a little bit quicker, be a little more efficient. They look for what I call leverage points. They look for things that they could do that would make an even stronger impact. And so maybe I'll share a few of those with you to kind of get the conversation started here. The real high-performing boards that I get a chance to experience and work with, that one of the things that jumps out, of course, is to have a real clear vision of where it is that you're going. And that probably goes without saying. That's not brand new news to anybody in the room. Sure. It's what they do with that I think makes a real difference as we go forward. As Ed was sharing, it's kind of this whole concept of ownership, and how do you get people to own that vision? Especially, I was thinking about, if I were trying to figure out how to get my fellow colleagues, businessmen on Main Street involved in this, the trick of this is to make it come alive for them. And there's a number of ways that you can do that. One of them is to make sure that even in your own meeting agendas, one of the things I see among a real high-performing executive teams is that the actual vision that you're trying to work towards is included on the actual agenda. And why is it there? It's there so that every meeting that we come to, it's back in front of us. What were the 3 or 4 things that we really wanted to accomplish right in the very beginning? Because if you're like me, when I get on the United Way, I'm a doer, right? So sometimes I want to get down in the weeds and do stuff. You know, I want to get on a committee because it's exciting and because you can actually see something that, you know, we build a new park. I mean, it comes out of the ground. You can see it. You know, you're putting in irrigation lines. You can see the dirt and dust and all that kind of routine. But the danger of that is as leadership teams get more and more into the work, into the actual activities, what it draws you away from is the big picture. What it was we were originally, because it all starts this way, doesn't it? We all have, you know, this kind of 3 grand ideas, or sometimes my guess is the grant application says that if we're going to give you the money, you know, you got to be working on these 3 or 4 things. And so it's really helpful just to have that right at the front of your agenda. So that's one piece that I see. And so then from that vision, then really on the agenda itself, and some put it on the bottom, some put it on the side, top really doesn't matter. But what does matter is what that does as far as your meeting agendas. Because really, when I'll give you the downside. When I get called in to work with a hospital board or a United Way board or something that's maybe struggling a little bit, one of the very first things I do is look at the agenda from the last 2 or 3 meetings. And this will probably go without saying, but what's really ironic is that the teams I work with that are struggling a little bit, when I look down the agenda and then look at the vision, what it was that they were trying to accomplish, it's pretty hard to tell. There's a lot of stuff going on. There's a lot of committees and activities and that type of routine. But there's not too much of the meeting that's really focused again back on the big 3 or the big 2 or whatever it is that they were trying to accomplish. So the first thing that vision does, I think it really informs your work as a leadership team, and it really does help keep that agenda pretty tightly focused. The third thing that it does that I think is really, really important is that it also then, really high-performing boards, they actually set a calendar for their meetings so that about and this varies a little bit, but probably every 3rd, 4th, maybe 5th meeting of that type of routine, the board will intentionally stop and take a quick look back at where we've come over the last 3 months or the last 4 meetings or however, kind of depends on how often you meet. But they tend, and what do they tie that back to? They tie it back to what the vision was. What were the 3 things that we were really trying to do? And it's almost so simple sometimes that it kind of frightens me. But that doesn't mean it's easy, because really what it requires is that it creates a loop, as you can tell, where you spend a lot of time talking about what the 3, 4 things is you want to accomplish. It gets deeply tied to the agenda. Now that doesn't mean, you know, as Ed and I were talking, even at our own board meetings at the ESD, doesn't mean that we don't talk about other kinds of things, doesn't mean that we don't have committees maybe come and report out, or that we don't talk about some activities, but the big core of the meeting, if you will, is around those 3 or 4 things. And the cool part of that is if you stick tight to that, then pretty soon the first thing is knocked off the list. Then what are you focusing on? You're focusing on the last 2 items or last 3 or however many, you know, how many core items were in your meeting. So that vision piece tied into your agenda becomes really, really critical. And then I know as a board member, it helps me get kind of tied back to, you know, what was the big deal? And one of the analogies I always use, if anybody in the room has ever built a new house, I know Ed has just done that. But if you build a brand new house, you'll notice, you know, you get a general contractor to come in and do the work, and he or she's got a whole bunch of subs that, you know, do parts of the work. What do they do almost every morning? And if it's not every morning, it's once every week, you'll see them. They arrive first thing in the morning, they got a cup of coffee, and they got the plans. They got the plans laid out on the, you know, on the hood of the truck or the tailgate, right? And what are they doing? They're all referring each other back to, okay, one more time. What is it? What's the big picture? In fact, it's almost so obvious that if you ever look at a set of architectural plans, what's the very top sheet? The very top sheet of an architect's plans or a set of house plans?
Yeah.
It's
Finished.
It's the finished product. And so what they're doing is they're constantly referring back. What was it again? What's the 3 or 4 things we're trying to get done? Well, we got to get a foundation in the ground this week. You know, I know everybody else wants to get to the paint and the finish and order the appliances, but what we got to do is we got to get a foundation that, you know, goes, you know, that part goes without saying. So that's one way that vision becomes real important. But the other thing that the vision is really critical for, and being able to kind of have really good teams I work with, you take a single board member aside or a single member of the leadership team or an officer from the group, and you say, you know what, in the next couple of minutes, tell me what you're trying to accomplish. The vision is really nice because if everybody on your leadership team can tell you what those three things are, then you can actually go down Main Street. You can be in the grocery store. You can be in the crop insurance office. You do it, and you got your elevator speech all ready to go. So that's the other advantage of having that vision tied back, right? So that becomes real important. And then probably one of the last pieces that really comes to I don't know if you all this goes to United Way and a couple other groups I'm involved with. I don't know if you all have membership issues or trying to get people involved in the deal. The other key way your vision can be used really is as a nice recruitment tool. It's a way for you to either through flyers or through your newspaper or however you go about communicating to people, that vision, if you will, that final sheet of what the house is going to look like when it's done is really valuable. And if you've got, and it makes it even better if you've got a picture of it. I'm working with a group right now where they're trying to get a levee ready. And one of the things that, this just jumped out at me, one of their executive team members said, speaking of that house plan idea, he said, we really need a little picture or a photograph of what this thing might look like at the end of the day. And so what I would offer is that at some point in time, if you've got, you can describe it in words, but if you can begin to describe it even in a picture or a little artist rendering or, that type of routine, that's something to consider. I see that often, and that's, sometimes there's a local artist that can, can do that for you. Sometimes, and frankly, I always encourage that it not be too slick or fancy looking, frankly. It actually works better in most rural communities just to be kind of a rough out. So, as I was kind of driving up and driving down the Main Street here again today, and I come through here often, and so, but today I was looking at it with a different lens. I thought, okay, I kind of wonder what does the final Main Street project kind of look like? So if I were going to get people to have ownership and get them excited, get them to be part of committees, get them recruited, if you will, because it's all recruitment at the end of the day, right? Because if you don't have people to help, guess who gets to do it? That's kind of the way we are at United Way. It's like, let's get some volunteers, otherwise guess who gets to do it? So 9 people around the table. And so it can be that little artist rendering can be a really cool little recruitment tool because if people can see something visually, they can continue to be pretty excited. And I know that happens. I talk to people when they are building a house. There are times when you wonder if this dang thing is ever going to be done. And the only thing that kind of keeps you pushing hard at that is that mental picture of what this puppy's going to look like when it's all finished up. So so I think that can be really helpful. So the ability to go out and recruit a lot of times depends on how clearly can you describe what it is that you're really trying to do. It kind of gets that thing where you think about taking somebody by the hand, you walk them out here in the middle of the intersection and say, just imagine with me for a minute what this might look like. And so then can you describe it? And the better that you all can describe it as a leadership team, then the better the people you recruit to help you can describe it, because remember, they have to be your messengers. Some groups call them, they call them disciples or whatever you call them, but whatever your committee members are, the better you can describe it, the better they can. And that becomes pretty exciting. So having those committee groups come to you to report out is an important part of your work, which is different from you doing the work. I try to remind my United Way partners of that all the time. Having people come and talk to us about the good work and serving on committees, it also gives them a chance to be involved. And I always encourage folks that if you're looking for membership, be ready to answer the question, how much time do you need? Because typically the more, especially in this day and age, if I've learned anything over the past several years, is the fact that people will give you their time as long as it's not a lifetime appointment. And so a lot of times where folk kind of make a little bit of hitch in their planning is to say, we're gonna have a committee go to work on whatever it would be. At Harrington, it was Christmas lights, I remember one year. And so, but the bottom line is, what people didn't want to do is be on the Christmas light committee for every year. They're willing to help you for this year, help you get this project done, or this portion of Main Street, or doing the planters, or whatever they're going to do. But be ready to tell people, this is really kind of the length of time that we need you to help. And with that, a lot of times too, is appointing who's going to lead that. And so that can be a really important part of your recruitment, is to help identify who those leaders are, and bringing them into the, bringing them tighter into the fold of what the vision is, and can they describe it? How long is it going to take to do their part of the work? It's like building your house. You have subcontractors come in, and they come in, they're there for a week, and then they're gone. They're out of there, and that's not too asimilar for what we're trying to do. The other thing that can be really important too, in that, let's talk about committee work too for just a minute too before I forget about it, because I think one of the key roles of a leadership team always is keeping in mind, not only keeping the vision in front of them, but asking them the questions when they come to report out. What help do you need? What kind of support and resources do you need? Which is a lot different from me going to help you. It's me helping to identify, the group says, we're just stuck because we can't get a backhoe. Well, there's probably somebody here in the room who's got the connections to get them a backhoe, which is different than Rich going to get his backhoe and bringing it down Main Street. Really, isn't it different? That's different. And so what I encourage people at this leadership team levels, whether you're a PUD or a board member, is to think of yourselves as the visionaries. We already talked about that, but also as connectors. And sometimes that's real easy to forget, is that sometimes we get deep in the work, there's not a lot of volunteers standing around, and so, Ed, you go do it, or whatever the case might be. Whereas a lot of times the more effective way to do that is to realize that you probably have connections. That would be my guess. Most great leadership teams do. Or, frankly, somebody who knows somebody who's got a backhoe or a dump truck, or is an electrician that would be willing to give their time or what have you. And so one of the things that I think is real critical is to think maybe in terms, always think of your role in terms of being a resource gatherer and a connector. Because really, if you identify a team to get them to go to work on planters on Main Street, they are going to bump up against problems. It could be a zoning problem, it could be a manpower problem, it could be I need to, whatever the case might be. And so think of yourselves in terms of being connectors. And I'm always careful I get this stage to add in the caveat too, is that, I always encourage people, that doesn't mean that you can't be part of a committee, or that you can't be a member, but I always caution people about two things. One is, don't be the leader of that committee. Find somebody that that would be a great leader. Give them all your support and all your resources and connections and those kinds of things. But find ways to involve other people, because there's a lot of good reasons to do that. One is it's not you doing it personally, right? I mean, because otherwise you'd be doing everything. But more importantly, it involves people. And remember, Ed was talking about this concept of ownership. Maybe it's the last point I'll share with you before we kind of talk about just some questions you might have. This idea of ownership is really, really important. And the more that you can involve other folks in the work, which is why it's also important to kind of have blocks of time for people and not lifetime appointments, right? Because the more that you involve those folks, the more that they own the project. And I don't care whether you're doing Main Street or whether you're building a school or you're at a PUD and you're building a fish ladder or what have you. If it's only the leadership team that's excited about it, then again, remember I talked about earlier, all these things have a life cycle. Well, some of those life cycles can come to an end. And typically what you want to do is you want a project that's going to be sustainable over time. You're going to want a project that outlives you. We all do. That's what we call legacy work, right? And so something to think about, again, is not just going after committees, but really being intentional about who you involve in this. If I were to ask you around the table, I say, write down, take 2 minutes and write down 5 people who you would regard as stewards of the community. Those people who are really deeply invested here, who you already know that their grandkids are going to live here, okay? Those kind of people, you want to find ways to involve them, because you want to have ownership from those folks. That's what will cause sustainability. So the Main Street project doesn't become just an activity, but it becomes a way of life here. It becomes a lifestyle here. It becomes, however you want to title that. But the more you can involve people. So again, hopefully this rabbit trail we're on here starts to make sense. It starts with a vision you can articulate and get really clear about, It's one that you guys really own as far as your agendas are concerned, right? You want to have some committee reports, but you don't want your meetings to be about you know, what Rich did leading the committee this week. It's about some folks that maybe Rich can report on or that Rich brings to the meeting. There's some real value in doing that because it gives them a deeper ownership, you know. And then I lied. The last thing I was going to talk about is really having some benchmarks and some celebrations about your work. And this is the hardest thing. I mean, I can tell we've only met each other here for just a little while, but I can tell you're like leadership teams everywhere that I've met, is that you're doers. That's why you're here. You're here because the community entrusted you. You know, you're willing to step forward. You've proven that time and again. You said, you know, got a great project. I'll get behind it. We'll push that type of routine. Well, what happens is you get busy doing the work, and you forget to do two key things: celebrate it and recognize it. And there's an advantage in doing both of those. When you celebrate, it's good for you guys. So let's say, remember, go back, there was 3 big things or 4 big things on our vision we wanted to do. How many you have exactly? But let's say there were 4 of them. When that first one gets knocked off, maybe it's this is one people forget about. It's submitting the application. Or I've been with groups where they're submitting a 501c3 to form a nonprofit foundation or whatever it is. And they work like mad. They get the application done. It gets sent off in the mail, and then they just move right on to the next item. And I keep saying, you stop. That's a great time to celebrate. You're right. Not only for you guys, okay, because that's critical, but for the committees that are working, because they need to set some benchmarks too. And then you need to recognize and celebrate with them. Because every time that we do that, it gives you, frankly, a good opportunity and a good excuse to advertise that to your community. Mm-hmm. So there's the loop. So it comes back to your newsletter, your newspaper, your time in front of the editor. You know, I tell people, you know what, either find an excuse or create one to get in the media. Because people on Main Street pay attention to what you pay attention to. And so if this is a big, obviously, you know, I tell, working with a school district right now, as I mentioned, is trying to sell this bonded issued and levy, and bless their hearts, they've fallen into the same trap that I see a lot of folks do, which is they have been hunkered down focusing on getting the building plans and the bond issue, and all that time they haven't been talking to their community. And I keep saying, you know what you need to be doing is we were going to get some plans put together. Okay, the plans are almost done. Stop, celebrate that. Why? So you can feel good about the work. You can feel a sense of accomplishment. You can see the house coming out of the ground, the foundation being built. But it also gives you a great excuse, again, to be back out in the media and say, you know what? Main Street project hits goal number 1, hits benchmark number 1, hits a milestone. I mean, play that puppy up. You know, whatever the case might be. I tell schools and hospitals, make up your headline and then drive it home, because again, what you're doing is you're building committees, because people on the outside that you want to involve, they say, man, you know what, this thing is a going concern. You know what, I maybe wasn't interested in the middle, or you know, sometimes you have good people just stand on the sidelines and they kind of wait to see if this thing is for real, right? Yeah, so making it real for people, the little rendering, the little newspaper articles, in the media, the celebration, and then the recognition piece. When you do get good folks involved doing the work, find great ways to recognize them, because they'll hit little milestones too. Get them in here, get a picture, get the picture in the newspaper, just keep it in front. Just, you know, instead of one board member one time said it better than I do. He said, you know, you got to keep this thing alive. Mm-hmm. People have to believe that that's a living, breathing kind of gig. And that doesn't mean whether you're building a house or a school or a new hospital or a Main Street project. That's just keeping people, keeping people alive. So I don't know. So those are 4 or 5 things that as Ed said, we've had either the good fortune or sometimes the not so good. So we do end up going in on an occasion helping leadership teams or boards that are kind of stuck, which happens. Again, it's a life cycle. Kind of get paralyzed for a little bit, or sometimes just get too deep in the weeds doing the work. I'm a past president of our United Way group, as Ed mentioned, and we've gotten there a couple of times over the last 8 or 10 years, and it's not as I keep telling them, it's nobody's fault. It's just we get busy doing, and somebody's got to kind of stop us for a minute and just kind of pull us back up to altitude and say, okay, just a reminder. Here's what, again, one more time. Here's what we were trying to do, and getting. And well, bless his heart, he does that at the ESD too. He was giving me the accolades, but that is really important. And again, but I also want to just share the message with you that regardless of where you are in that life cycle, that those are very natural places to be. And almost every group goes through that. And sometimes I always say it's just how much time do you spend in the, in the little suspended animation part of the little paralysis part before you just get back up to altitude and say, oh, okay, great. You know what? Let's just get focused. Let's get our agendas. Let's get our meetings tight. Let's get refocused, and then let's celebrate that stuff. But people like to celebrate and be recognized. So anyway, so those are just some kind of as I said, kind of the river that runs through it as we work with lots of boards, large and small, and high flyers and medium flyers.
We really are on that cusp of being able to sell ourselves to the community. I think. I mean, when we get the Mainstreet qualification to go ahead and have the B&O tax, we really, that's I think where we can drive better membership. We can celebrate. We can.
I like the terminology used on celebrating. Like not necessarily having to wait till we get the B&O, but even on our next meeting, maybe let them know and build up the next meeting that we're going to be celebrating. The B&O, because we got a meeting this next Monday night or this next Monday, which is our general meeting. Like you said, start building up the celebration for maybe the following Monday. Instead of having a board meeting, have a celebration of the B&O, like you're saying, Ed. That creates enthusiasm because
it's a big deal.
It's huge.
It is.
It's a
Well, I
big
think us
deal.
having being a 501c3
Right.
is a huge deal, and I don't think that was
Right.
ever. I'm just my mind's
I
ever put in the
agree.
paper.
No.
I think that's a good place to start.
Yeah.
It's the den of us doers, is that we're just busy. We get busy doing, and sometimes that celebration, recognition piece, and sometimes I tell folks a celebration can be an ice cream social. It's the kind of it's not how elaborate it is. It's the fact that that the people are high-fiving each other and handshaking and recognizing your committee chairs and getting some pictures. I mean, I used to say, only one picture may get in the paper this week, but take 25 of them, because you're going to want to chronicle this over time. And there's something that makes people feel really good that maybe the president of the group or that there's group pictures with the officer and one of the committees that you're recognizing or what have you. That's a big deal. And then again, it just. In fact, let's think as I came in the bank building here, we were working with a bank down in the Yakima area with their board, and I'd made the comment about the fact that they were wondering how to get more involvement of their community and around what they were trying to do. And I said, just remember that people, this is true, human nature, everybody wants to be part of a going concern. And one of the board members said, well, then that's our gig. We got to get going. and I've always remembered that, because he said, if it feels to and it looks to people like it is a going concern, then people will want to be a part of it. They won't give you a lifetime appointment, but when you call and say, would you be willing to head up that part of the Mainstreet project that we're doing? I'm only asking for about 3 months of your time or what have you. I'm I'm right here as an officer. I'm beside to help you. I'll help knock the brush, as I said to ESD, to knock the brush down for you so that you can get the work done and that type of routine. It doesn't mean I'm going to come do it, but I'll,
Well, it's a pride.
It's a pride.
People have pride when certain organizations call them and say, hey, you want to help? We want you on our team and with our community.
Yeah. So keeping it alive is one really cool way to just think about it. So anyway.
Were you part of that Waterville economic development thing that happened in 2000?
Way back when. I was, but I don't remember. I mean,
There was a lot of
wasn't-
people, it looked like there was a lot of people involved
Yeah.
at meetings, and how
Right.
did that all, how did you guys get all these people to show up?
Well, my recollection was Margaret McBride through the extension agency. That was a project that they had, and then convinced the town to get involved, and at that point in time, the Chamber of Commerce also, and so, but Margaret and 2 or 3 other people really drove that. I don't remember, I wasn't that involved with it, as far as from leadership.
'Cause I think you know people better, I'm the newcomer,
Yeah,
but you know people and personalities, and what I am curious about is how do we go about presenting this to people and to get them to want to be involved? Because I know there's a lot of, from what I've heard, there's a lot of people doubtful of how long we're gonna last, or what are we really about, and
Is what's
that's,
happening.
Well, do we have a vision?
And we have vision statement, but it's,
But like, do we have defined, cause I mean, I just came into this and I still don't even know what our defined, like, end product or do we have one? Do you guys have one and I just don't know what it is yet?
we have a vision statement, but I think it needs to be more specific.
Yeah, like a specific
Like
goal.
we-
like you were saying, like more of a goal-setting
Yeah,
achievement.
And
And that's,
it,
like you said, that's kind of where we got, we're at a crest right now, and, you know, we're not falling, but it's like we're stagnated, you know, and,
Well, we've
When-
been waiting for
yeah.
this authority to actually be able to go out and collect this B&O tax, which would give us some money to, you know, probably have a part-time secretary and a little more organization. But we've just been kind of waiting. That's how I felt the last couple of
That's-
meetings, is we've just kind of
That's the truth, right
put
there.
other things on hold. And it was great to talk about Waterville days and those things. But our organization, we kind of have put that on hold, waiting to get our authorization for the B&O tax.
so the 4 things that say we have 4 things we at the top, of what we want to accomplish, can those be smaller? I love this.
Sorry.
Oh, went right at the cuff.
Smaller things, I
Still
mean,
can't see you.
like obtaining our, tax credit authorization, our website, I mean, are they things like that, or are they more forward-looking, like,
No, I think it certainly can be. It has to, it has to fit your project, but clearly, the biggest piece, again, as we talked about, is that it's never the wrong time, never a bad time to stop and say, okay, let's just go back and look at our vision again. Again, just like the contractors on the tailgate of the truck. Let's look at the big end result again one more time. Let's all of us get real clear on what it is that looks like. And then once you kind of got that, which is that's the long look. That's really the end in mind. And then then those next 3 or 4 items really become kind of the keystones, if you will, your benchmarks of what would you have to do first. You build a house, ask a contractor, he'll tell you some pretty critical things that happen first. We'll put a foundation in the ground, right? Then we're gonna put the walls up on top of that, then the drywall and what have you. You try to jump start any of those, we know what happens. You try to put the electrician in, he's waiting, right? Yeah. So to answer your question, I think a revisit of that vision so that your elevator speech is real clean and crisp. And again, it's just a good, clear, intentional reminder for you guys of what you're about and what you're trying to accomplish. And then I just encourage folks not to have a laundry list,
Right.
which is pretty soon then it goes from being a goal, then it becomes a checklist. And those checklists become anything and everything for everybody. And pretty soon it's hard to celebrate because you're so scattered all over. If your vision is to do this, and step 1 of that is get your 501c3, then that becomes a big honking bullet right at the top. Then okay, what would be the next big piece that we're going to do right after that? Then the third that would follow from that naturally. Now you can have committees working like mad off of any one of those. But if you as a group you just have to be real clear. Because people, the natural thing is, you sit down and you show them a nice little rendering of what the final product they're gonna be, and the next question happens every time is, okay, well then what's the first thing we gotta do? Well, again, if Rich is not real clear as to what, well, listen, give me 2 minutes, let me share with you kind of what, here's the game plan, here's the offense we're running here, here's what we're gonna do, right? How that's gonna look. And, but it's gotta start with clarity here, and like you said, if even a single person is not really quite sure exactly what the vision is and how that all looks and feels, it's a great time to just stop in the road for a few minutes, get real clear on, on what we're gonna, what we're building here. And then it's also a great opportunity, as I mentioned, that's why I said the real high performing teams I see, they go 2 or 3 meetings, whether they're monthly or every 6 weeks or what have you, and then they stop in the road, take a quick look, what again was the vision? Where are we on each of these, 3 or 4 key points that we're working on? Because one of the things that will happen almost inevitably, you'll get going along working on those 2 or 3 or 4 big items, and as you get going along, you'll notice all of a sudden there's a leverage point. And by a leverage point, it means it's something that you're gonna be doing down here that while you're working on this big one right here, you know what? Wow, there's an opportunity to add 2 things or 2 items or 2 people or 2 resources in here that will actually jumpstart down here. Does that make sense? Yeah. You go back to the house building analogy for a minute. You get a really good builder as you're going along building a house, he'll come along and say, hey, heads up. One of the really cool things, before we get too far down the pike, that we did in another house that would make this even better, would make this plan even faster, smarter, more efficient, more value, that type of routine, that can be of real value to you. But unless you have all 3 of those or 4 of those laid out pretty clearly, you'll miss those opportunities to say, wow, you know what? While we're doing that grant application, we could actually write in there some money that would help us do this one down here. Or there's 2 activities that we've identified that would actually help us hit 2 of these things at the same time. So there's some cool ways to catch that, but it all starts with you all being real clear on what you're wanting to accomplish.
Crossovers.
Yeah, crossover is a great way to think about it. Yeah.
We said we want to, why we're here is to revitalize our downtown, right? But that means in looks, in presentation, and in activities to bring people back down to the downtown. And hopefully, by doing these things, more businesses will want to come in, which will in turn bring more people downtown.
Absolutely.
So,
I think
that's what I have understood of what kind of where we are hopefully headed.
But I don't think we really have that in writing, in an organized goal, in a,
One of the guys used to say, can you put it on a pamphlet? I mean, really, is it clear enough you could put it on a pamphlet for me, or on a, or on a single sheet, with the little pencil diagram on the top? I mean, show me what it is that we're trying to build, and if you can get it to that kind of clarity, you can probably sell it on Main Street. No pun intended, but that's,
Well, that's super broad, like what are we, like what things are we gonna do to make it prettier and like,
Right, right.
all the bullets underneath that.
It's such a good point, because if I'm running the local apothecary on Main Street here, or the sub shop, or whatever it might be, I got to see what's in it for me, and I mean that in the nicest possible way. But human nature is, I'm with you as long as you're going to do most of the work. I'll go along with you on that kind of deal until all of a sudden I hear you say something that was real exciting. Here's what we're really about. One of the 3 or 4 things we're trying to do is we want to make sure ultimately we've got a slate of activities coming that will bring people to Main Street. If I'm a business owner, now you got my attention. Now I'm interested. Okay. Well, and then we can go on to other questions. Well, what's it going to cost me? Well, you know what? That's part of the cool thing. We've captured part of the B&O tax. Guess what? It was going somewhere. We brought it back home. We're going to use that to do this, which will bring more people. So there starts to come your leverage points. But you gotta be able to get those 3, 4 bullets on, just clear enough that it's in your vision, on your agendas, in your media, and in your own verbiage when you're talking to people on Main Street. If you can get that, then you're not only on the crest, you're just going to stay there. You just keep flying forward. It's part part of the deal.
And basically the three that Lisa mentioned is really I think the backbone of the whole thing that got the Main Street off the ground, you know, was to enhance the community, you know, the downtown, and, you know, we've had issues with that, but then we've also talked about bringing in more business. We talked about helping new businesses maybe for the first 6 months financially with their utility bill, or help them with the rent bill or something like this, once the cash starts flowing, you know. The other one was the activities to bring and stimulate, you know, the interaction of the community, not just us, but other communities around us, and different activities, keeping our eyes open for, like the flea market that was down at the Pine Tree. You know, they had no idea there's people down didn't even know there was a Waterville Days, you know. And I think you and I talked about it, I know you and I talked about it, but going down and meeting with their board and encouraging them to come become participants in Waterville. But again, that falls into one of the three that she said.
Absolutely.
I know, one of the things when we did our workshop with Sarah Hansen from the state, she encouraged us to meet, our board, to meet with every board of, we have quite a few nonprofits here in town, and to sit down with them and talk about how we can help each other.
Interact.
And I think that's gonna be a really great way for us to gain new members. And that's, I've always been excited about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that the recruitment piece, I mean, you're right on track. So again, it falls from your vision, getting real clear about that. And frankly, as you know, there'll be two danger zones. One is that if you go to meet with those boards and you don't have something that you can leave with them, could be just it's a half sheet, or it's a one panel of a trifold, or what have you, that again, it's got your vision, got your little pencil rendering, or whatever the case might be. It's got your 4 bullets that why this matters to you, Rich, as here on Main Street in your business. Why does that matter? That really becomes your recruitment tool. And the good news is you want to leave it with them so that they then can explain it. Again, they become your disciples, right, over time. And then probably the biggest thing, and that you all got to kind of ride herd on each other on this to remember to do it, is don't make that visit a one-stop event. You got to keep wrapping back around to people, because you got to go back and celebrate with them and say, hey, you know what? Haven't been with you for 3 months or 4 months time, but I want to come back and share with you the great work that's underway. Just as a reminder, here's what we were trying to do. Gets back in front of them again, and notice check marks beside goal 1 and goal 2. Those pups are done. Guess what? We're on to part 3, and here's how we need your help, and da 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 da. You know, that type of routine. But that getting that kind of clarity will help you all the way around, and then people just continue to get excited about it over time. Got to keep it alive.
So as far as a first step or next step, I mean, I love what you said when, you know, you've been coming to 3 or 4 meetings, you want to get involved, and yet, really, we haven't done we've done a crappy job of saying this is what we hope to accomplish, this is what we hope it looks like down the road, and I think it's interesting if we were to take the whole board, or everybody shows up at our meetings and 9, 10 people, and what do you think our vision is? And see what they say. I mean, I bet we'd have 10 different renderings, and so maybe that is something we need to.
Yeah, I like what he was saying about getting together and call it the elevator speech, or
builders.
Yeah, but I think the key to it is just have not necessarily a canned verbiage, but have a goal that we can all expound on it in unison, you know, that we all have the same feelings. I know that Ed and I talked about, you know, you coming, and, you know, he was kind of sensitive that what he was doing. I says, please bring it on, you know, because we were at a point where, in my opinion, we weren't going to take a dive, but we were stagnated because we had been working for 2 years to get the 501c3 and the B&O, and we've got to the point, like Sarah is so excited that we actually went and had a workshop. She says most organizations don't get workshops until 3 or 4 years down the road. You guys had it in the first 2 years.
But we didn't do anything with it.
Well, we did. You got the survey. You got a web page going. You know, so it's not like it didn't lay stagnant. But you know, the thing is that I see this, that we're heading the right direction of just being able to come together as a unit and work as a unit. Because right now, I know you've been involved in 2 committees, and you've been involved in committee. I've been involved in multiple committees, and she's coming on and she's fired up, ready to go, and we're sitting there going, what committee, you know? But it's not, you know, what I'm getting at, what you were saying, it's not necessarily the committee, it's just to have the, I call it, I like the way you put it, the celebration.
Yeah.
That stimulates a lot of activities and,
Well, I think it's
Yeah.
it's a different venue here in Waterville too, because
Yeah.
it's a small town.
You better-
And everybody talks, and
Everybody
you
knows
never know what's gonna be said.
Yeah.
And everybody has their own,
What a huge opportunity to, if you view it as an opportunity then, so you wanna craft the message and get it in people's hands, okay, well, you know what, if word gets around town, and it did in Harrington, you know, the fact of the matter is, then use that to your advantage. You know who your stewards are, who your communicators are, who your connectors are, then let's fashion the message. So, yeah, it really, you know, you're in just, again, another ideal spot. You're right at the crest of the wave on the thing. It's a great time to stop in the road. It really is. You do it in a little mini retreat or do it in a little mini workshop or what have you. Make it the first half hour of your next meeting. But just stop and take and say, you know what, we want to get that vision back, get it real tight, it's only 2 or 3 sentences, because again, you gotta do it in an elevator, right? You only got a couple of minutes between floors, right?
right.
That's right. So think about it, get it that clean and clear, because again, you want your senior citizens to be able to tell each other, you want your business people to be able to tell each other what that is, and if it gets, I've seen, you know, vision statements that are paragraph long.
Oh, yeah.
And it just doesn't work.
No,
So,
you don't ever read them.
yeah, and really, I'd go back to Franklin and rewind the tape. You gave such an awesome description of what the project is about. If you can capture that in a couple of sentences, do that, and then focus in real tight and say, okay, let's just get real clear again. What 4 goals did we want to accomplish? And you know what they are. I mean, really, you can flush those out. And then once you've got them back in front of you, use that. I mean, use that again as another unveiling. You know, for your media, make a splash out of that. Get somebody go and get with the editor and say, you know what, bottom line is, you know, here's some things we've accomplished. And, you know, we've kind of reaffirmed, it's like reaffirming your wedding vows, if you will. But you know, we've reaffirmed kind of our vision of where we're going, and use every opportunity like that to celebrate. And just keep it in front of people. And if you do that, and then revisit it often. Every 3rd meeting or 4th meeting, and you know, Ed will tell you go to an ESD meeting, or thankfully now most of our school board meetings, and on their agenda somewhere, it's either at the bottom, the side, the top, is what are we about? What are we trying to do? For us, it's lead, serve, and support our school districts. That's what we do, and we beat that thing to death, because we want. In fact, we get now that you ask our superintendents, what's the ESD do? Well, they're there to lead, serve, and support. They know that. You get it to that point where it's by heart, and they know, just like you do. Then that crest goes on, just keeps on going. So anyway, congratulations on the great work so far. Ed was kind enough to share just a little bit of the information. This is an exciting project. I mean, really exciting.
It's very exciting.
A way to energize and again, you know, people are always looking for something to be part of a going concern. Gets them excited. They want to be a part of it, and especially when it happens at home. There's so much to be discouraged about outside of home, you know, outside of our hometown. That if they can have something that's really positive and jazzed here, I mean, I was just over visiting with Kathy Nelson a little bit earlier this afternoon about their work with the Leader in Me and the Cubby work. I mean, Kathy and I were talking. I was giving her a bad time about celebrating, because I said, you know, just in small talk, I said, how's your summer going? Great. I said, you got some hiring to do? Oh no. She said, we got that all done already. She said, we got 6 brand new teachers. They're extraordinary. And then she stopped for a minute. She said, oh my God. She said, that's because of the work that we've been doing. I said, yes, it is. Did you celebrate it? Well, no. I said, well, then you have to stop and celebrate. You do, because what I typically see in a lot of small rural communities is school districts are struggling to get, you know, to find quality teachers and what have you. Well, people see the school here at Waterville as a going concern. And so people want to come here and be a part of it. So it's worth celebrating. And that's really the same kind of thing you're doing right here on Main Street. People want to be part of that kind of gig.
I think if we're excited, that will breed excitement.
Yeah.
I really,
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
and we're darned excited, aren't we?
Well, I don't I didn't wanna, I felt bad after the last meeting, that I didn't want you to think, you know, you guys, these three have done the majority, the yeoman's work here, and, I didn't mean that
No.
to.
I didn't
to
take it
mean,
that way.
You know.
I did.
Yeah, I did for sure.
You know, because we're there. I mean, we're so close to really being able to have a huge accomplishment here, but the Chamber of Commerce has just been doing nothing for a long time, and that's just that same mindset that people kind of get, that, oh, it really isn't going anywhere, not doing anything.
It won't last. I mean, you can
And-
hear all
yeah,
that stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Exactly, and I think that's, like Lisa said, that's kind of what people, you hear the undertones, well, we'll see, we'll see.
Yeah.
It's like I throw this up, I just thought of it, I had a couple people this last week that, you know, we talked about Waterville, Main Street all the time, but anyway, you know, we used to say revitalize, and I had a couple people bring to my attention, there's no revitalizing needs to be done, it just needs to be vitalized. And I thought, now that's positive thinking,
Yeah.
you know? Because a lot of them took it very personal, that, you know, we have businesses that are closed and stuff, you know? So we talked about vitalizing the downtown, and they got all excited. And I told them about it at the next meeting coming up. We'll see if they show up, but
Yeah.
I thought, geez, one word makes a difference.
Isn't that something?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you, I'm sure you do, would you be willing a little bit down the road or soon to help us with the wording of asking for money?
Oh, always, you know.
I know you're probably really good at that.
Yeah, well, what we are willing to do is certainly is to help you at any stage along the way, that we can be that we can be of assistance to you in one way, shape, or form.
I mean, I know
We're
Ed
glad to
knows,
do that.
you know a lot of people in town. Like I say, I'm at a loss, so I would love to
And it's
have
the
the
people out of town, so that's the wonderful thing about this, is people we know in Spokane or Seattle or Bellingham, they can decide to utilize this program and help us with their B&O tax.
That's nice, huh?
And
I've got my-
it doesn't have to be just Douglas County or Waterville, or,
And that's pretty
statewide.
darn exciting, yeah.
so it can, you know, what is it, 133,000 a year, we could,
That we can acquire.
and
And that's not even counting the other contributions we can get, that comes straight from the B&O.
That's
Yeah.
amazing.
So that's
Yeah.
like
So
getting
in
into like
Chelan
Wenatchee
and,
media and the Chelan media.
Wenatchee, and
I mean, I'm gonna hit.
they get it,
realtors on the
they,
other side.
133,000.
Yeah,
It's a big
Wenatchee
deal.
hit it first time this last year, it took them 6 years to get it.
Good for them.
Chelan got 54,000, you know, and it's out there. It's just a matter of building the
Asking.
momentum for it.
Yeah.
and
But again, glad to help in any way, along the way.
That would
I
be
mean,
great help.
Again, but again, to not beat this horse till it falls down and have to unsaddle it, but the fact of the matter is, to even do that, the fact of the matter is, what's gotta be in place, a real clear vision, that people understand exactly where you're going.
What we're gonna do with the
Yeah.
money, see, that's what I'm concerned, is
Yeah.
we're gonna ask
I
for
mean,
money.
I'll invest, but you gotta be real clean, clear, and concise with me about what it is that you want, that you want me to help with. And if I can see it, I'll probably invest in it. But if I can't even understand exactly what you're trying to do.
Okay.
But anyway, pleasure to get a chance to say hello to everybody.
Thank you.
And
Appreciate it.
anytime that we can
Ed, thank you for
Yes, Ed.
inviting me.
provide help,
Yeah.
we're glad
Appreciate
to do so.
Seriously.
Yeah.
Just
Congrats in advance on the great work. It's just helping to revitalize our communities.
Yeah.
This is one, but as you can tell, small communities have a really fond spot in my heart. I'm from a little town called Chattaroy, Washington. I don't know if you've ever been through Chattaroy or not, but Chattaroy, Washington. It's on the Newport Highway. If you ever went to I always used to tell people, if you've gone to Priest Lake, Idaho, you've driven through my hometown. One intersection right at the bottom of the main highway, and you hang. As I used to say, you hang a right there at Bob's Pretty Good Hardware, and you're right there.
Oh, pretty good hardware.
It's just incredible. Anyway, but thanks for the good work. I'm excited to watch now. have kind of vested interest. I'm anxious to
Yeah.
watch and see how it goes for you, and let us know.
Okay,
Yeah,
thanks so
thank
much.
you.
Thank you,
Honored
Rich.
honored to meet you.
Thank
You
you,
bet.
Rich.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you again, I appreciate your time.